All right, welcome back, and welcome one and all to the second episode of Inboxing Season 3. And for the first time, we're going to have a guest that works in a slightly different vertical, still talking about email marketing, but particularly we're going to be talking a lot about nonprofit. And my guest today is has worked in nonprofits for a number of years, at least 5 that I know of, and for a very big nonprofit. So he's learned a lot of, about this topic, and it's a pleasure. He's a pleasure to talk to, and he's going to be a great guest. So please welcome John Walsh.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, for sure. And I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, like we kind of have seen each other virtually, like on LinkedIn and different things that came up. So it's great to finally, put a voice to a face and get to actually know the person instead of just the LinkedIn still image.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's great.
All right. So yeah, let's just jump right into things. So I just like to start with, a little bit about your background, like where you're from and all that. And then, a little bit of your journey, like how you ended up on a podcast talking about email marketing.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I live in North Carolina. I'm in the United States. And so email marketing is my second career. I have a degree in music, and at the time I was doing music at a nursing facility. And my boss came up to me one day and asked me if I had a Facebook account. And I was like, yeah, why? And she was telling me that the nursing home also had a Facebook account, but it was pretty dormant. And I was about the right age. And would I go ahead and take it over? And being my boss, I said, yes, I would love to. And so my only experience with digital marketing at that time was having a Facebook account. So I took it on and I started loving it. I was doing the pictures, I was writing the posts, very engaged with it. I started reading about it, going to conferences, and really took on the social media aspect of it. That evolved and snowballed into doing the email newsletter for them. And then kind of became the newsletter is great, but the website is not really optimized for the newsletter. So I started looking at that, and I loved it. I loved the real-time interaction. I love the real-time data, seeing impressions and testing images at the time on Facebook and ads. And so I really found a love for, at the time, digital marketing. Went back to school to do some digital marketing in general. And really when I was looking at kind of doing the career switch from music to digital marketing, I looked hard at kind of the different types of digital marketing and which ones I really enjoyed. Was it social? Was it, content? And I really landed on email. Email is really what I enjoyed. Enjoyed the newsletters, enjoyed the communication aspect of it. And so, yeah, like most email geeks, I fell into it and I had love for it. And so that took me to my role as email marketing at the nonprofit, which I was at for 5 years, as you mentioned. And really just helped that organization grow email. Nonprofits are a different sector. We're a unique bunch, and then you throw email into that, and we're even more unique in that regard. So, but I love it. I mean, email is such a great communication medium and channel. So well used, and it's so impactful. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, I think when you say that, when you talk about email as a communication channel, like it just changes the conversation. I think a lot of people see it as like something they just need to have. Let's send an email. Okay, we sent an email. Great. Okay, some people opened it. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
a communication channel, you can have constant conversation with email marketing. Like that's really the beauty of email marketing, I think.
Right. And that's really what I tried to make it at where I was at, which was, it was more of a tool at the time. And it is a tool, so to speak. It was like a tool in the toolbox. Okay, now I need a hammer. So I'll grab a hammer and I'll use that. Now it's a screwdriver time. And it was like, okay, now it's a social media post. Okay, now it's an email. But I didn't view it that way. And my boss would always tell me, email it needs to be a one-to-one channel. It's not a one-to-many channel. And yeah, you want to get me on a soapbox, then we can get me onto the one-to-many channel. But yeah, it's a one-to-one. And so that's how I view email. It's communication. And we'll talk about this more, I know, but the more you can make it one-to-one, the more you can make it a constant enjoyment in your inbox. This is the Inbox podcast. So the more you can make an enjoyment, the better it is for not only the user, the supporter in my case, but right for the marketer as well.
Right, for sure. So let's jump to, so what are the things that you see in your inbox that make you cringe and you find like really upsetting?
Yeah, so there's a couple things from both angles, from the nonprofit world and from the e-commerce world. But I guess from the e-commerce world, just to kind of speak to everybody out there, I guess getting emails that I don't remember subscribing to is probably one of my frustrations. It's like, I don't know how many times I've gotten emails from sister brands where I've signed up from one major corporation, and then they thought by signing up for them, I also wanted to hear from their sister brands, which I didn't even know existed. The only way I found out was, email, opening it up and finding out like, oh, that's where that's from. I've received a couple of those, and that's like, I'm not too sure about that. It's like, if you want to talk to me, this is a great opportunity to introduce a welcome email and say, hey, thanks for signing up from this brand. You may also hear from our other 5 brands as well, or whatever it is. That would be a great way to use the welcome email, in my opinion. So that's from an e-commerce standpoint. From a nonprofit standpoint, it's the kind of the hit or miss emails. It's like either they'll email me like 3 times in one day, or there's the email organizations that they're the nonprofit organizations that never email you until Giving Tuesday or end of year or when they need money. And then it's like, other than that, we're not going to send you. So I forget, like, who is this? Did I email that? Did I sign up for their email? I must have, but I haven't heard from them in like 6 months. So yeah, I guess that would be it. Is just I think email needs consistent communication. Yeah.
And that's it. You're saying like if and it's interesting how it really lines up, like, because you say the same thing about any brand that's not sending consistent emails, and then Black Friday comes and they're just sending 30 emails a day. That's not a strategy.
Yeah, that's not a strategy. No. That is an email blast, which is not my favorite thing. So.
Right. In general, the word blast is not a great word, because no one should get blasted.
Nobody should get blasted.
Oh boy. All right. So let's dig deeper down this hole. So what do you think are the biggest mistakes that particularly nonprofits are making?
Yeah, I think I think we talked about the consistency. I think that's one of them. They're very hit or miss when they email. I think the other thing is that they only communicate when they want to raise money. And I don't think that's the best use of email. I mean, email fundraising is great, but I think it needs to coincide with email communication as well. So providing value, building a relationship, being in their inbox with content that they want. And then hit them up for fundraising. I mean, I'm not going to say don't ever fundraise through email, because that's just crazy to me. That's a great way to communicate with people, and we need to do that. I do think though that, like I said, consistency, I think just some of the best practices in email, sometimes nonprofits miss those. Just not knowing what those are, knowing subject line, knowing preview text and how to use preview text with the subject line, knowing to segment a list and how to segment a list please segment a list, right? I mean, we just talked about blasting, and if you're not segmenting, then you're really missing out on that one-to-one communication. Cleaning lists is another big one. Kind of something that I've gone through in my own journey is the importance of cleaning the list. And yeah, I'm not talking like, cleaning a list every 3 months. I'm talking years not going without cleaning a list. Will end up will land you in a spam trap. These are people who haven't opened up in 3 years. Sometimes it's probably time to, maybe try a re-engagement campaign and try to catch them one more time. But if not, I mean, unfortunately, you're going to have to say goodbye. Maybe try to catch them in a different channel, right? Maybe email is just not their channel. Maybe their direct mail, maybe their phone calls. But yeah, cleaning lists, that's another kind of a interesting one for me. So yeah, I guess I would say those are kind of the biggies.
Okay. This is like a surprise question because it just came to me. But what type, we talk about sending other types of content. So what kind of content, like give me like a list of at least 3 or 4 things that they could be sending.
Yeah. So great things. Stories are one, right? I would say talk about, like in the e-commerce world, we would say social proof or testimonials, but in the nonprofit world, we call them stories. It's the same thing. They're a little longer, but depending on your nonprofit, right? But you can be telling stories of, animals that you've helped or people that you've helped. You can use it in their words or like in an interview or just, third person. I think stories are a great way. I think another content is I would say like ebooks or just resources that your organization can put together that would help a person not only understand your mission, but just kind of help them get more involved in it. Right. Just trying to think some examples, but another one is polls or questions, right? I've seen this a lot with organizations. It's a lot of fun. It's not like quite like BuzzFeed, but it's, just, what they're interested in. Not only is that great content, but you're actually learning more about them. And then you can use that to personalize emails in the future. But if you know what kind of things they like, you can, if you gather that information, then you can create that content around what they like. Do they like videos or do they like, written content? Then you can be switching up what you put in your emails. Do they like ebooks or do they want another email news subscription? I don't know, but these are great things. So and then what's going on in the organization? It doesn't have to be necessarily a story of somebody you helped, but it could be just what we are doing, where we are now, like the front lines. I think we've used that a lot to great successes. These are the programs we're running. This is what kind of success we're seeing. This is where we need you. And then that obviously leads to kind of the fundraising aspect, but that can all be done over time. That's the thing. It's not just one newsletter. It's built over time.
For sure. All right. So what was your personal, like, proudest moment or biggest win as an email marketer in this nonprofit space?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go back to that cleaning the list. And when I got to the last nonprofit I was at, our sender email reputation score was not very good. It was pretty low. We would do what we just talked about, which was kind of the blast philosophy of, all right, we got a list, and we had a large list. It was 1 million people. So imagine, every time we send an email, that many people, and if we were doing it once a week or something like that, man, I mean, our reputation, deliverability took a big hit. And so when I came in, I really started to look at that and focus on changing it. And so we really looked at cleaning the lists, removing people who hadn't engaged with us in years, trying some re-engagement campaigns to get them involved, but eventually saying goodbye and not like taking them out of the database, but just not emailing them all the time with every email. Then we looked at segmenting and really, writing copy, writing content, looking at what they wanted, and I say personalizing, but really being purposeful in the type of emails that we send and using those lists for those type of emails. It was an uphill battle on some days because it's really kind of unusual unless you're an email marketer to talk about deliverability and the importance, and people just want to know, well, Did we get great open rates? Okay, then. Did we, reach our fundraising goal? Okay, great. But it was, to me, it was like, well, we might be reaching those, but we could be doing better if we had cleaner lists, if we had, had less hard bounces, less soft bounces, that kind of thing. So it was an uphill battle, but eventually, a couple years in, we went and actually raised the score up quite a lot. And eventually it was great, because eventually what was happening were people beside myself being in meetings saying, hey, no, we can't send to everybody. We need to segment this list. And that was the big win. When I wasn't the one touting it and saying, we need to do this, and other people were doing it for me, I was like, okay, that's it. I love it. That's great. And it was like, hey, we can't be doing this, guys. We need to segment our lists. And have you cleaned the list yet, John? And that kind of thing. So that was and then as a result of the cleaner list, it was a chain reaction, right? Cleaner lists, segmenting, personalization. Oh, the open rate started going up. Oh, the click rate started going up. Oh, the conversion rate started going up. Yep, they sure did. So
that's awesome. All right, when nonprofits get in touch with you, so what's your 1, 2, 3? Where do you, the end of the day, where do you feel like you're helping them the most?
Yeah, I think I do a pretty good job with strategy. Just knowing, again, we talked about the consistency, knowing what type of campaigns to put together, how often to email, the frequency, the segments, the type of email. Do we use a plain text type email in this case, or do we use a HTML newsletter type in this case? Just knowing those things, it can really make a big difference. So just strategy. I do pretty well. I do enjoy testing on my website. There's a few tests that we've conducted that have some surprising results sometimes. Enjoy testing, and then just basically just the best practices, helping nonprofits, know what to do, how to use email effectively, because a lot of times with nonprofits, they could have volunteers doing the email program. They could have people. They could have executive directors who are trying to, or fundraisers who are trying to raise major donors, and they're also trying to put together an email. And maybe they don't have the time or the know-how to do it. So I try to really help them and work with them, just understand really the basics of email and landing in the inbox, and then standing out in the inbox.
Right. That's the other part of it. I had a question. It just flew out of my head. Oh yeah, no, something you mentioned about your websites. I noticed in your website, you mentioned something about humor. You have a little video about humor in the inbox. So it made me think of this question, which is not going to appear on the screen, but do you think nonprofits have an opportunity to be a little more humorous?
I do. I really do. As you mentioned, it was just something that I've seen a little bit more often. And I know it doesn't work for every nonprofit. I know that some nonprofits have very serious missions, and it won't work for them. And I get that. I'm not trying to tell every nonprofit to use humor. It's also very difficult, right? Humor doesn't even matter if it's a nonprofit. Humor in email is very challenging because it's written, and it's you can offend people very quickly. So you really have to be careful whether you're nonprofit or not. But it is with nonprofits, the first thing I would say is try to be more conversational with email.
Right.
And I should probably go for, what's that?
Just be human, be a human, be a human being, make it a conversation.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Be human. And so for nonprofits, start there, even before you get to humor, just be human. And then if your nonprofit organization kind of has that brand, that voice, then go ahead and add it in. I've seen some great examples of subject lines that are humorous, even design that's just a little, I'd say, quirky. It's great though, because it helps you stand out so much more in the inbox and in your emails. If you are using a little bit of humor, it also makes you more relatable, right? If you can tell a joke, even if it's a bad one, as long as it's not offensive. If it's a dad joke, my kids like to make fun of me because I say a lot of dad jokes. But even a groan, I guess, sometimes is better than a laugh. So yeah, if you can do that, I would really suggest finding ways. And it doesn't have to be throughout the whole email, just a line here or there. maybe an image. I think one of the ones I saw was it was like grow a beard, and they had a beard on Bob Ross. And it was just, I mean, it was just fun. Like that makes sense, but it was just, I mean, this was great. So the more
Right.
you,
No, I'm just thinking out loud, like, if you saw knock knock in your inbox, like, who's not going to open that email? Like.
Right. I mean, you're gonna open it, and that's a great subject line right there. I mean, and then you could even add the pre-header text with who's there, and then or the preview text who's there.
Right.
And then,
Exactly. And then right, and just lead them down the hole. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and as long as it relates to the content of the email, go for it.
Right, and even if it misses, you got like, even if the joke didn't land, like they're looking at your email. You got their attention. I'm not saying you should do clickbait, but like you should have a real attempt.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that too. Like you said, the human aspect of it. Even if it doesn't land, there's something relatable, right, about all of us who have told a joke and it doesn't land, and you kind of just like, oh man. But still, I mean, I still feel like it doesn't make me think any less of a person because a joke didn't land. Yeah,
right.
That's great. That's a great example.
All right. Okay, so which nonprofits do you feel are knocking out of are doing the best work in the email space or even in marketing space?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few out there. I think the first one that comes to mind is Compassion International. They do a great job, not only of the emails, but I know they do a great job of segmenting emails based on your interests, based on behavior. So Compassion International is like one of the first ones that I think about when I think about email. Invisible Children, they have a great mission as well. And just, again, we were just talking about, very difficult missions to talk about through email, but they do a great job of it. Make it very engaging. They use story very well. They don't always just send fundraising emails, but they do a great job with the story. They do a great job in the inbox as well. They'll use quotes for subject lines, very compelling quotes, which I really enjoy that. A little bit more than the usual kind of informational, what I call the informational subject lines. I think another one that does a great job is called water.org. They help third world countries, get water, and their emails are very well designed. The writing is very simple but very impactful. I mean, they're not very long emails. They're not like 300 words or whatever. They're only a couple sentences, a couple paragraphs. But they put everything in there that you need. They put the value in there. They put it, the need in there, the problem in there, and it just comes across very well. The last one that I can think of is called Ocean Conservancy. I enjoy their emails, and they do very well with the relationship building because not every one of their emails is a fundraising email. I think one time they sent me a screensaver. One time they'll send you, things to download for just, and again, it's almost like, I would say it's like the calendar that you get in the mail, right? But it's digital. So it's a screensaver. And every time you open up your computer, you see this nice image of the ocean, and you're like, oh yeah, those are the nice little things, right? And it's great. And then I think about them occasionally or every time I open up my computer, which is all the time. So whether it's that, but not only, their emails are great. They have great imagery, great content. So yeah, those are the four that I can think of right offhand.
All right. Awesome. Sort of as a side, do you think when I worked with some nonprofits and they had like a policy, like every email has to have a donate button. And I kind of felt like not necessarily. And then even just thinking about this right now, like you can even make it dynamic. In the last 30 days at least, don't show them that button. But
yeah, I
think it's a good policy.
I think it's a great policy, and we would do it often. It's because it doesn't feel like so much like you're always hitting them up for money, right? Even if it's just that donate button's just there, it's not really highlighted. But if it's still there, and people see it. But yeah, I mean, it's even scary when people put like donate buttons on thank you emails. Like, thank you for donating. Please do it
donate.
again. at some point in time, you kind of have to draw the line, and trust your communication plan, trust your strategy, and say, okay, look, we're going to send these maybe 3 emails. Sometimes I like to do the 3-to-1 ratio. Like, we're going to send these 3 emails that aren't going to ask for any money, but they're going to ask for some sort of engagement, or it'll have some sort of specific call to action, whether it's watch this video, post this, share this on social media, or download this image, or download this book, right? You still want to get them engaged, and then send them the email. Also, it's not tricky, but the other way to do it is, you can always do the donation on the landing page instead of the donation on the email, right? So you could say, here's, and it doesn't have to be a big shout out donate, but it can be, if it's going back to your website anyway, there's probably a donate button on there, unless it's a specific designed landing page. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right, where not every email has to have a donate button.
Right now, 100%. And I think it's like from this, I think it flows from this thing. Oh, but someone might want to donate, and then you miss that opportunity. No, treat people like people. That guy who's you're right. He read that email. He liked it. He'll see the button again tomorrow,
Right. And you can email tomorrow. And if it's great content, right, they're going to open up tomorrow's email too. But if you keep asking them to donate, they may not open up the one from tomorrow, which is, kind of going back to the things that are upsetting about, it's like, email or, donate every day. It's like, well, I saw your email like yesterday and the day before to do that. And day 3, I'm not going to do it either. So I don't know, but you're right. Like, with that mindset of, oh, but we might miss somebody.
Right.
It's like the once and the only time they may donate.
Right. They saw that they once got a donation that way, from, out of, you worked for a company with 1 million emails. So like, from the 1 million, a guy did donate. Somebody did. So we should keep that going, yeah.
Right. And there's stories about this. It's true. I mean, I've seen it happen before, where you'll send an end of year email, December 31st, which is a big day, and somebody will donate off of it 2 weeks later. But it's like one person. I mean, and the nice thing is it's an email, so you can go back to it and donate from it. But it's that kind of like mindset of, well, if we don't do it, that person would have never donated 2 weeks later. It's just, yeah.
Right. I think it's sort of, I mean, I don't say it's like boxing, but like, you know what I mean? You want to pick your spots. You want to keep them engaged. Okay, now, okay, we need a donation.
Yeah, and then give them the uppercut, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's it.
Yeah, keep them on the ropes. Yeah, that's great.
In boxing. There we go. All right. All right. AI is like the rage. Personally, I'm enamored with ChatGPT and all these things that are coming out. It's changing stuff left and right. But I see the same copy now on similar products in similar places. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to have the same copy all over the internet. But it's obviously going to have a big impact everywhere. But how do you think it's going to impact the nonprofits?
Yeah, and it already is in little ways. I do know of a few companies and a few agencies that have that offer nonprofits AI opportunities, and I know of a few organizations that use it. So it's real. I mean, because I'm enamored with it as well. I love thinking about it and all the great things that you can do with it. And yeah, with the new one out there, it's like a lot of fun to type in things. But I think, right, so I think before we even get into, I think you want to jump right into like subject lines and stuff. But I think even before that, AI is going to really help with relationships, with donor relations, with supporter relations, and really knowing when, how, where, why to email them or to communicate, just in general, really. And just that point of, okay, well, maybe we have a donor, like donor upsell, right? Okay, we have a donor, he's been at this level or she's been at this level. AI is going to be able to just know, okay, it's time to, based on their past behavior, it's time to go ahead and send them an email, and we're going to ask them for this amount of money instead of this amount of money. And we're going to write copy that's very specific to this because we know that, instead of, whatever I was going to write. The AI is going to be able to tell it for me. They're going to be able to automate it And you're really going to be able to start building, I think, better relationships with people, and you're really going to be able to start seeing an effectiveness in communication and in fundraising, because it's not going to be just kind of me sitting around going, or my boss sitting around going, yeah, have we checked to see if we general donors are ready to go to mid-level, like, oh yeah, no, I need to go do that, kind of thing, right? AI is just going to be able to do it for us.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
think you're.
go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I think you're dead right, and I think we'll start seeing it on ESP level. That like a lot of automations will just, like you don't have to manually add a tag to a guy. It'll be like, okay, this guy gets a tag. He's ready
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it will go. It's a lot of fun to type in subject lines. I actually was just on LinkedIn and wrote something, a post about preview text, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I use Chat GPT for preview text sometimes." It's like, yeah, I mean that's, especially sometimes when you're like just have writer's block and you've written a whole email, and you've written a subject line, you're like, oh man, now I gotta write a preview text. Like, what do I do? So at least, if nothing else, it gets your mind going. Like, oh, okay, that's an
100%.
interesting way. Yeah. So I do think it's going to be revolutionary, at least in the nonprofit. Well, not just, but it's just revolutionary. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna like. I feel like it's like the internet in 1996. Like we don't know exactly how it's gonna play out, but like it feels like we're in like a landmark kind of moment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with all the stuff you hear about what it can do, and even the ethics behind it and all that stuff. If you follow that with was it Google or recently? But yeah, it's just it's just amazing what it'll be able to do. And it'll help us, right? I don't think it's. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to replace us, and it's going to.
No, I mean there'll still be jobs. So everyone. Yeah, everyone's going to need
people.
a job.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to come up with a strategy. You still have to know, the criteria and all that. So
for sure, and also like I don't think ChatGPT is going to have its own voice, and it's not necessarily your brand voice. And you could take what they've given you and adapt it to match you. But just and that's what everyone's scrambling to do, I think, at this point, and that's, I think, where it's going. But we're still needing writers, and and even they could be taking advantage of it just to get out of the writer's block or figure out how to finish that sentence.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's exciting.
It is.
All right, so what do you feel like that the top 5 low-hanging fruit, quick wins, like that any nonprofit can just do it in one day?
Well, I don't know about doing it one day, but
all right, maybe one day. Maybe a week. Let's say a week.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, so I think like one we've talked about, just implementing best practices, especially for nonprofits, right? Knowing segmentation, segmenting those lists, subject lines, preview text, using only one call to action in an email, or let's say a fundraising email. Just kind of the basics that maybe some people take for granted, but nonprofits just maybe need a reminder. For whatever reason, just knowing those things will really help your email stand out. Really help you engage people and be more effective. I think another one is doing a retention, right? I think a lot of us are trying to always acquire new addresses, but it's really more important to focus on that retention. Focus on retention first. An email is great for this, right? Because you already have their addresses, you already know a little bit about them, and you can mix in the general newsletter communications with the fundraising communications. That ties into donor retention is monthly donors. I think that's a big low-hanging fruit for a lot of organizations, is getting those people who already give regularly to become a monthly donor, right? I mean, we talk about the subscription model. And e-commerce is using it all over the place, right? Nonprofits are using it too, but I don't think we're using it as quite as much as we should. And it can go right back to segmentation, right? Like looking at donors, saying, oh, this donor donated, 5 times this year at this level. Maybe they become a monthly donor, or maybe they did donate 12 times this year. Like they're already a monthly donor. Just sign them up to be, and not just sign them up, but ask them to become a monthly donor. You're already doing it. Like just go ahead and make that happen. So I think that's, just monthly donors is a great one. Welcome series. It's, I guess, kind of probably big for both e-commerce and nonprofits, but nonprofits are, I think, are falling down on the welcome email series, and I think that's a great way to get new donors. I think it's also a great way for new donors to become monthly donors. So going back to the previous point, right? So don't just have a first time donor and then don't ever talk to them again, right? Create these automations, create these email strategies where you're emailing them certain content over a certain amount of time, and then asking them, hey, thank you for your donation. Would you like to become a monthly donor? So I think those are some of the big things that nonprofits could start doing right now. In a lot of cases, you can, like with the series, you can, once you build it, it's not a set it and forget it, but it really has a big impact for minimal amount of work, I would say.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And it's particularly, subscription, like you get, monthly donors. That's, you already have that coming. And all you have to do is put them into a series, monthly. Okay, thank you for your donation. We've accomplished so much because of your help. It's gold. Literally.
Yeah, and then you can do a cultivation series after that, right? Like once they become a monthly donor, just
just pat them on the back,
Yeah, pat them on the back and say, hey, thanks, and then every once in a while, like we talked about this earlier, is the anniversary, thanks for becoming a donor last year this time,
Right. Send them some what do you call that stuff? Send them a small gift, in the mail. In the real mail. Send them a bracelet. Send them, I don't know, a t-shirt, like they'll spread your message, like yeah. Turn them into a billboard. Yeah. And they'll appreciate, they'll appreciate it. They got something, and and you'll get your message out there even more. Yeah.
For sure.
All right, yeah, this is the ugly side, which we've touched on probably a lot of these already, but we'll just hammer on them one last time. What are the top 5 mistakes that you think advocates are making?
Excuse me. Yeah, I think, So again, going back to just implementing the best practices, just knowing what to do, how to do it, when. It's okay. Not every email is going to raise, all the money you need in one fell swoop. With emails and nonprofits, a little different. People are still, the age demographic's a little older. People are still, getting used to email fundraising. So it doesn't quite compare yet to direct mail as far as fundraising goes, but it does, as we talked about, a great way to communicate with people. And it's very fast, right? So when something happens with your organization and you want to get it out, you can't, you can write it in a snail mail, but by that time it's going to be over with. So email is a great way. So just know those best practices. As I mentioned, focus on retention, then acquisition. It's okay to try to, you need to acquire new addresses. You need to grow your list, but don't do it at the result of losing donors. Because it's much harder. And it's same in the e-commerce world, right? It's so much harder to gain. It's so much more costly, right, to get new addresses than it is to retain addresses or retain support. Excuse me. The other one is asking money without building the relationship, right? I think we talked about that as well, right? Just build that relationship with people. This is also comparable sometimes to e-commerce. It's like getting those 5 emails in one day asking for money, and there was nothing before it and there will be nothing after it. It's just not a good way to do business. So take the time, use consistency. And I think the other thing we haven't really talked about that I noticed even in my work is not using the platforms to their fullest capabilities. So, a lot of times, you'll get in there and you even talked about tagging, right? I mean, so they'll just kind of send an email and they'll go back in and they'll check their analytics and then they'll leave. And like, there's just so much more, even some of the free stuff that you can do with it, like tagging, that will help you, just knowing about it. So I'd really, just suggest, learning the platforms the best they can and how to use it for your organization.
That's awesome. All right. All right. So what parts of the work you're doing do you find the most challenging?
Yeah, I think the most challenging parts is letting people know, nonprofits know that there's a better way to do email. I don't know if that's too simplistic, but you
Nah, I
know,
could, I could, I could hear that. I think every email marketer will nod their head on that.
okay. And it's, I mean, I know a few email marketers have this, I've had this conversation with a few email marketers where like, I've mentioned before, like just because you email doesn't mean you're an email marketer. Like that's kind of the misconception, even with social media is like, oh, well, I use email every day, so therefore I know how to be an email marketer. Yeah, there's a little bit more training and background that goes into that. So, but just going again, it's to me, it's like educating people, and I love to do it. I have a background in teaching, so knowing even when I talked about my win, it wasn't about just the win, but it was about educating people along the way and saying, hey, this is not only what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. It's not just for now, but it's for the future. And I think that's where email is, especially in the nonprofit world. Email is now and in the future. Email is continuing to grow with nonprofits. People are becoming more used to donating off of an email. People are interacting with e-commerce and they're seeing e-commerce emails and they're wondering why nonprofit emails don't kind of match up, if that makes sense. If it's, like why does an e-commerce only have one call to action and why does this nonprofit one have four? Or even just a whole experience, right? Why can I go onto, an organization, onto a company and like do one click buy, and I have to go onto a nonprofit and have to go through 4 pages to donate? So I think just like I said, just the education and people are right. They're buying stuff, so they understand how it works. And nonprofits, we have to raise our game to get there as well. So that's what I would say.
Okay. All right. We've reached the finish line pretty much. So do you have any final thoughts? You want to close with?
Yes, please. Yeah. So whether you work for or whether you work for nonprofit or not, email is a great and powerful way to communicate. But you need to use it as it was intended, right? You need to use it to build relationships, to provide value. You want to send emails that you would want to receive, I would say. So yeah, that's kind of how I'd wrap things up.
All right. The word to the wise: send the emails you'd want to get. If we all follow that, it'll be a beautiful inbox. That's for sure.
But it's hard, right? I think it's hard because we're so in the weeds when you're writing an email and putting it together. You've read it so many times, it just makes sense to you. But sometimes it's good to just take a step back, honestly, and read it as it just arrived in your inbox and react to it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a great feeling. I think. I mean, you can experience this, but we're like, you sent an email. I don't know, an hour or two later, you see it in in your other inbox, and you read it, and you're like, oh, this is a really good email. I hope everyone's had that experience.
Oh, I do too. I do too. Yeah, you should be proud of the work that you just did. Because like email, we just talked about emails. It's not as simple as writing it 5 minutes and sending it.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, you got I don't know if you know David Laker, but he thanks you for a great presentation. And Ephraim Gopin said, John Walsh is dropping truth bombs left and right.
Oh, thank you.
Check that out. Yeah. So, thank you so much. Really, this was a great conversation, and I think we got so much. And I really hope a lot of nonprofit professionals listen to it and enjoy it. And take it to heart and do better work.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be on here and to chat email. I always love it. So my two passions, email and nonprofits. So thank you so much. Thanks for everybody out there who's listening. And yeah.
All right, stick around. I'll be with you in a second. All right, that's our show for today. Thank you everyone who joined us. And if anyone's watching or is interested, Inboxing is still looking for a sponsor for season 3. We reach a lot of people, and I can give you all the details if you get in touch. But that opportunity is there and on the table. So get in touch. Thank you, everyone who joined me today. And that's the end of our program.